So the question is, are chickens a clean bird? Are chickens something that we can eat biblically? I've heard the argument more than once that chickens are some kind of hybrid bird and that they're not clean and we can't eat them. I have looked into this and at best, that's a possible gray area. But to be honest, I've looked into this and I cannot find any information that chickens are unclean birds. Now, before we get into this, let me just say this. If you are very convicted in your heart that you shouldn't be eating chickens, then don't do it. I'm not trying to convince you otherwise. I'm just showing you my research and what I believe. The first thing I did was try to pull up characteristics of birds we know are clean and birds we know are unclean. You can pause to read this list if you'd like. But this is a small compilation of things that are characteristic to clean birds in the Bible. For instance, the gizzard. We know for a fact chickens have gizzards. Based on the above list, these are all clean birds to eat. Chicken, duck, goose, turkey, the normal kind that we do eat already. And here's a list of birds that we definitely cannot eat. There's actually a lot more on here. But it's mostly birds of prey. Then I tried to examine the history of the chicken. This says it's in the Phasinidae family, a family of heavy ground-living birds, which includes things like turkeys. I've heard people say that chickens are some kind of genetically modified bird, but I actually haven't been able to find proof of that. And we have history of chickens being alive as far back as the 15th century BCE. We even have pictures of chickens, aka jungle fowl, found on Corinthian pottery in the 7th century BCE. We also know that chickens are mentioned in the Bible. For instance, Matthew 26, when Jesus tells Peter about the time the rooster will crow. Roosters are also mentioned in Proverbs chapter 30. And then again in Matthew 23, when Yeshua describes a hen gathering her brood under her wings. Full disclosure, I can't say 100% with utmost certainty that these are all references to chickens. A rooster could be another male bird, and a hen could be another female bird. But we know during the time of this writing, chickens actually were in Israel. They have uncovered chicken bones in archaeological digs. I also examined Leviticus 11 and Deuteronomy 14 in every main translation we have, like the Masoretic, the Samaritan Torah, the Dead Sea Scrolls, and the Septuagint. And I was not able to find any conflicting information across the different translations. There's one final piece of evidence I want to examine with you guys. People bring up the fact that chickens eat a lot of unclean things like mice and reptiles like snakes and lizards, and they eat all kinds of bugs that are not clean. That may very well be true, but that does not necessarily mean that eating those unclean things makes them unclean. At least not in the aspect where if we eat them, we then become unclean. Perhaps it has something to do with the anatomy and how the Father made them. For instance, when you cut open a chicken, it doesn't bleed like a cow would or a goat. Same thing with fish. When you cut them open, they don't bleed like normal red-blooded creatures. They may have a different type of filtering system where those toxins don't actually get into the meat when they eat unclean things themselves. But let me show you what I'm talking about. Most people all agree that the turkey is a clean bird. Well, what are some of the things that turkeys eat? Right? They eat insects, worms, snails, frogs, and small reptiles, just like chickens do. And what about ducks? They eat pond weeds, insects that I'm sure we can't eat, mollusks, fish eggs, whether they're clean or unclean fish, small crustaceans, amphibious fish, frogs. Both of these birds that most people believe are clean eat unclean things on the regular. And the same thing can be said of fish when you examine clean fish species. In the Torah, it tells us fish must have scales and fins, and if they have both of those things, they're clean to eat. That would mean that fish like bass are clean. And I have personally witnessed bass eating frogs and even small birds. And mice and snails and all kinds of unclean fish bait. Same thing with trout. I mean, all trout are clean fish, but they eat all kinds of unclean bugs. Now, does that mean that they are unclean to us? Well, not according to the Torah. At the end of the day, with all of my research, I have not been able to find any compelling evidence that chickens are unclean. If I could find compelling evidence, I would stop eating chicken. But the truth of the matter is, in this situation, this current situation with chickens, it's going to be a Romans 14 kind of deal. It's going to be a matter of opinion because, like I said, there is no compelling evidence that chickens are unclean. But if you feel in your heart that chickens are unclean and you shouldn't eat them, then don't. It's always better to err on the side of caution. But that would still be a personal choice. For instance, I don't eat Doritos anymore because there's compelling evidence that the cheese spray that they have contains pork in it. But I can't be sure about that. At the end of the day, that's a personal choice that I made. And you're going to have to make your own choice whether you want to continue eating chicken or not. If at some point in the future I was to find information that changes my mind on this, you guys will be the first to know. But at this current moment, it is my opinion that chicken is a clean bird based on the evidence that I have found out. And you all are going to have to make that same choice if you want to continue eating them or not. But if you make a personal choice, I would just suggest you don't grieve somebody. For instance, if you decide not to eat chicken anymore, I don't think you should be going around telling everybody they can't eat chicken anymore. Because again, no real compelling evidence in the Bible or outside of the Bible for it. That would be a matter of opinion. That would be a personal choice. And we can't treat personal choices like Torah law. I'm not going to grieve anyone if you decide to continue eating Doritos, because I cannot 100% prove my beliefs to you. However, I do have a personal conviction and I have stopped eating them. Again, though, not going to go around and tell people that they can't eat Doritos because of my personal conviction. I pray that this study has blessed some of you and clarified some things maybe you weren't sure about. At the end of the day, if you are not sure about something, pray to the Most High unceasingly until He answers your question for you.